During the extended months of ongoing care and gradual adjustment, Mark's world narrowed to the rhythms of medical routines, therapeutic sessions, and the quiet companionship of those who stayed closest to him. Each morning brought a fresh commitment to the small tasks that formed the backbone of his recovery: gentle breathing exercises to maintain lung health, assisted movements to preserve joint mobility, and conversations with specialists who carefully tracked every subtle change in his condition. He learned to communicate in new ways when speech became challenging, using simple signals, written notes, or devices designed to help bridge the gap between his thoughts and the outside world. These adaptations, though demanding, showcased the depth of his patience and his refusal to let circumstances define his entire sense of self. Family members took turns maintaining a steady presence, reading aloud from favorite books, playing soft background music he had always enjoyed, and sharing updates about the world beyond the hospital walls to keep him connected to life as he had known it. In these shared moments, laughter sometimes surfaced over remembered stories or light-hearted observations, serving as brief but precious reminders that joy could still find its way even into the hardest seasons. Mark's gratitude for every act of kindness remained constant. He would often express thanks through a look, a gesture, or a few carefully chosen words, letting those around him know how much their efforts meant. This prolonged chapter became one of profound interdependence, where the giving and receiving of care wove a deeper tapestry of love and mutual respect among everyone involved. As weeks turned into seasons, the medical team began introducing more structured goals into Mark's daily plan, each one carefully chosen to match his current abilities while gently stretching toward greater independence wherever possible. Occupational therapists worked alongside him to explore ways of managing everyday activities with modified tools and techniques, helping him regain a sense of agency even within strict limitations. Physical sessions focused on maintaining circulation, posture, and whatever strength remained possible, always guided by his comfort level and paced to avoid exhaustion. Mark approached these efforts with the same quiet determination that had carried him through earlier phases of life, celebrating incremental progress, such as sustaining a particular position for a few extra moments or successfully completing a new breathing pattern, with understated pride. He also spent time in reflective solitude when the schedule allowed, contemplating the unexpected turns his path had taken and finding small ways to nurture his inner peace through gratitude practices and mental imagery of peaceful places he had once visited. These private moments helped him preserve a core of calm amid the ongoing uncertainty, reinforcing his belief that personal worth extended far beyond physical capability. The consistent support from loved ones continued to act as a vital lifeline, their presence reminding him daily that he was seen, valued, and cherished exactly as he was in that moment. Throughout this time, the broader community that had once known Mark in his more active days kept him in their thoughts through quiet acts of remembrance and encouragement. Former colleagues sent occasional messages of solidarity, sharing how his positive influence lingered in their workplace long after he had stepped away. Neighbors who had appreciated his friendly greetings and helpful nature checked in with family to offer assistance with practical matters, ensuring that the household continued to run smoothly during the family's frequent absences. These gestures, though small in isolation, accumulated into a powerful current of goodwill that reached Mark indirectly but meaningfully, reinforcing his sense of belonging even when direct interaction was limited. He would sometimes listen as family read these messages aloud, his eyes reflecting quiet appreciation for the enduring connections he had built over the years. In turn, the experience prompted many around him to reflect on their own lives, on the fragility of health, the importance of kindness in everyday interactions, and the ways people can support one another through life's most difficult passages. This ripple effect of awareness and compassion became one of the quiet legacies of Mark's challenging journey, touching lives in ways that extended well beyond his immediate circle. As medical evaluations continued over the passing months, the picture of long-term outlook became clearer, though it carried a mixture of realistic limitations and carefully nurtured hope. Specialists discussed possibilities for future transitions, whether to specialized facilities offering ongoing support, or adaptations that might one day allow a return to a more home-centered environment, always framing conversations with transparency and respect for Mark's own wishes whenever he could express them. He listened attentively, asking questions through available means and indicating preferences that reflected his enduring desire for dignity, comfort, and closeness to those he loved most. Family members participated fully in these discussions, advocating thoughtfully while balancing hope with the practical realities presented. Through it all, Mark maintained a steady inner resolve, accepting what could not be changed while focusing intently on what still lay within his power to influence: his attitude, his connections, and the small daily choices that shaped his experience. This phase illustrated the deep resilience of the human spirit when met with unwavering support, showing how even profoundly altered circumstances could still hold space for meaning, love, and continued growth in whatever form they might take. Yet the weight of the journey never fully lifted, and there were days when fatigue, discomfort, or waves of understandable sadness visited more heavily than others. On those occasions, the simple presence of a familiar voice, a gentle touch, or a favorite melody played softly often proved enough to carry him through until the moment passed. Mark's ability to find solace in these small anchors spoke volumes about the foundation of strength he had cultivated long before this chapter began. He remained, in every way possible, the same thoughtful and kind-hearted individual who had once moved through life with quiet purpose and genuine care for others, only now expressing those qualities through different channels and in more restrained ways. The story of this extended period stood as a testament to endurance, to the sustaining power of human connection, and to the quiet courage required to face each new sunrise when the road ahead remained long and uncertain. As time continued its patient unfolding, Mark's journey reminded everyone who walked beside him that love, in its truest form, persists through every season, offering light even when shadows stretch long across the path. As the long months of dedicated care stretched onward, Mark reached a stage where certain aspects of his daily experience began to stabilize in a new kind of normal, one shaped by careful planning, adaptive equipment, and the consistent rhythm of professional and family support. Medical teams adjusted his surroundings to maximize comfort and safety, introducing specialized seating, communication tools, and environmental modifications that allowed him to participate more actively in moments of interaction. He grew remarkably adept at using these aids, turning what could have felt limiting into practical extensions of his will and personality. Conversations with visitors became richer as he found reliable ways to share thoughts, ask questions, and even offer the same quiet encouragement he had always given so freely in healthier times. Family members noticed how his eyes still lit up with recognition and warmth when familiar faces appeared, and how a subtle shift in expression could convey humor, gratitude, or deep affection more eloquently than words ever could. These small but meaningful exchanges became treasured highlights of otherwise structured days, reminding everyone that connection transcended physical barriers and that Mark's essential kindness remained entirely intact. In quieter intervals between visits and therapies, he would sometimes listen to recordings of nature sounds or gentle instrumental pieces, letting the familiar tones wash over him like a soothing reminder of peaceful days spent outdoors long ago. This phase represented a slow but steady settling into acceptance, not resignation, but a realistic embrace of the present combined with ongoing efforts to make each day as comfortable and dignified as possible. With the passage of additional time, discussions about transitioning to a more permanent care setting gained momentum, always approached with Mark's preferences placed at the center whenever he could indicate them. Options were explored thoughtfully, facilities known for attentive staff, peaceful surroundings, and programs designed to preserve quality of life through social engagement, sensory stimulation, and individualized attention. Family members visited potential locations, asking detailed questions and imagining how Mark might feel in each environment, always guided by the desire to choose a place that felt as close to home as circumstances allowed. Mark participated in these decisions to the fullest extent possible, signaling approval or hesitation through clear methods that had become second nature. When a suitable arrangement was identified, one that offered both professional expertise and a calm, welcoming atmosphere, the move was prepared with great care, ensuring familiar items, favorite blankets, and personal touches accompanied him to ease the adjustment. The transition itself unfolded gradually, with families staying close during the first days to provide continuity and reassurance. Staff at the new setting quickly came to appreciate Mark's gentle nature, noting how he responded positively to kindness and routine while maintaining an air of quiet dignity that inspired respect from everyone around him. This new chapter brought a different pace to life, one marked by consistency and attentiveness rather than rapid progress, yet it carried its own form of stability that allowed breathing room for reflection and small joys that in this more settled environment, Mark discovered fresh ways to stay engaged with the world beyond his immediate space. Technology played a helpful role, large screens displaying family photos that rotated slowly, audio messages from friends delivered at gentle volumes, and occasional video calls where loved ones could share glimpses of everyday life to keep him included. He especially enjoyed when grandchildren or younger relatives visited, their natural energy and unfiltered affection bringing bursts of lightness into the room even if interaction remained limited. Simple sensory experiences also became meaningful, the scent of fresh flowers brought by visitors, the texture of a soft throw placed across his lap, or sunlight filtering through windows in patterns he could watch for long, peaceful stretches. These elements, though modest, accumulated into a daily experience that felt nurturing rather than merely clinical. Mark continued to express appreciation in the ways available to him, through sustained eye contact, a relaxed posture when content, or a slight squeeze of a hand, communicating volumes to those who knew him best. The staff, too, developed a genuine fondness for him, often lingering a moment longer to share a kind word or adjust something for his comfort, moved by the quiet strength he continued to display day after day. As seasons continued to turn outside, Mark's story quietly influenced those around him in lasting ways. Family members found themselves growing in patience, empathy, and appreciation for life's ordinary moments that once passed unnoticed. Friends who stayed in touch reflected more deeply on their own relationships, making extra efforts to express care before time slipped away. Even strangers who heard fragments of his journey through word of mouth carried away reminders about resilience, the value of compassion, and the enduring power of human connection in its many forms. Mark himself, whenever awareness allowed, seemed to hold a calm acceptance of his circumstances, as though he understood on some profound level that his presence, however changed, still mattered deeply to those who loved him. He remained, in every way that truly counted, the same thoughtful soul who had once walked life's paths with openness and goodwill, only now demonstrating those qualities through stillness, endurance, and the simple act of continuing to be present. This extended season of his life, though marked by profound limitation, became in its own way a testament to grace under pressure, to the beauty of steadfast love, and to the quiet ways people can continue to touch one another even when the world narrows to a single room and a shared heartbeat. The weight of time brought moments of understandable weariness, days when discomfort pressed harder or when memories of freer times surfaced with greater clarity. During those periods, the steady presence of familiar voices, gentle touch, and unwavering companionship proved especially vital, acting as anchors that helped him weather the emotional waves until they passed. Mark never lost the capacity to find comfort in these gestures, a softly spoken reassurance, a favorite melody, or simply the knowledge that he was not alone often proved sufficient to restore a measure of inner calm. His family and caregivers learned to read these subtle shifts with increasing sensitivity, responding with patience and without pressure, allowing space for whatever he needed in the moment. These experiences deepened everyone's understanding of what true support looks like, not always fixing or changing, but simply remaining present with kindness and respect. Through it all, Mark's spirit stayed remarkably consistent, a quiet light that continued to shine even when outward expression grew faint. Looking back across the long arc of his journey so far, it became clear that Mark's story was never solely about the challenges he faced, but equally about the love, loyalty, and human goodness that rose to meet them. Every person who walked beside him, family, friends, medical professionals, caregivers, carried away lessons in compassion, endurance, and the profound difference that steady presence can make in another's life. Mark himself, in his own restrained yet powerful way, continued to embody the values he had always held: kindness, gratitude, and an unshakable belief in the worth of every moment, no matter its form. As his path continued to unfold in its measured, careful way, it stood as a gentle reminder that life's deepest meaning often reveals itself not in grand achievements, but in the quiet, persistent acts of care, connection, and courage that carry us through even the most shadowed valleys toward whatever light awaits on the other side. Years continued to unfold in their measured way, each one bringing its own blend of quiet routines, seasonal changes visible through windows, and the steady presence of people who had committed to walking alongside Mark for as long as needed. The care setting he now called home had become familiar in the best sense of the word. Staff members greeted him by name each morning with genuine warmth, remembered his preferences for room temperature and pillow arrangement, and often paused to share a gentle observation about the weather or a bird spotted outside. These small consistencies formed a comforting framework around days that otherwise might have felt repetitive or confined. Mark, though limited in outward expression, continued to respond in ways that conveyed contentment when things felt right, a softening around the eyes, a relaxed hand, or simply remaining calm and attentive during moments of interaction. Family visits remained the brightest points on the calendar, with loved ones arriving bearing familiar scents, freshly brewed tea, a favorite lotion, or the faint trace of outdoor air, that instantly transported him back to earlier chapters of life. They would sit close, speaking softly about everyday happenings, reading passages from books he had once enjoyed, or simply sharing comfortable silence that needed no filling. These gatherings carried an unspoken understanding that presence itself was the greatest gift, and Mark seemed to draw deep nourishment from knowing he was still so thoroughly surrounded by love. Over time, technology evolved in small but helpful ways within his environment, allowing even greater inclusion in family milestones that once might have felt out of reach. Distant relatives could now appear on a screen to share birthdays, holidays, or simple updates, children showing off new drawings, adults recounting recent travels, grandchildren practicing school recitations, all carefully paced so Mark could absorb each moment without overwhelm. He followed these shared experiences with clear interest, his gaze steady and engaged, occasionally offering a subtle signal of delight or recognition that brought smiles and quiet tears in equal measure to those watching. Such connections bridged the physical distance created by circumstance, reminding everyone that emotional closeness could remain strong and vibrant even when bodies were limited. Care staff often joined in these moments when invited, celebrating alongside the family and reinforcing the sense that Mark's life still held celebration-worthy chapters. These occasions became treasured anchors, proof that joy had not abandoned the story but simply learned to arrive in softer, more deliberate forms. The medical oversight continued with the same thoughtful diligence, though the focus gradually shifted from hopes of major recovery to one of preservation, comfort, and prevention of additional hardship. Regular assessments checked for any signs of discomfort, adjusted supports as needs changed, and ensured every aspect of daily care aligned with dignity and ease. Mark's body, though greatly altered, received unwavering respect through every procedure and adjustment. Nothing was done without careful consideration of his evident responses and preferences. Family members stayed closely involved in these decisions, advocating gently yet firmly whenever needed, always guided by the deep knowledge of who Mark had always been and what would honor that essence now. This collaborative approach created an atmosphere of trust between caregivers and loved ones, allowing everyone to focus on what truly mattered, keeping Mark as peaceful and content as possible for as long as possible. In this climate of mutual respect, small improvements in comfort, whether through a better supported position, a soothing warmth pad, or perfectly timed pain management, were met with the same gratitude once reserved for life's larger achievements. As the story stretched across more seasons, Mark's quiet endurance began to serve as a living lesson for many who encountered him, even briefly. New staff members arriving at the facility often heard gentle words of introduction about the man in the room by the window with the peaceful view. "He's one of the kindest souls you'll ever meet, you'll feel it the moment you're with him." Those who spent time near him frequently left the room changed in subtle ways, carrying a renewed awareness of patience, the value of small kindnesses, and the depth of strength required to face life when almost every outward freedom has been removed. Visitors sometimes lingered longer than planned, drawn by the calm atmosphere Mark seemed to generate simply by being present. His story, shared carefully and always with respect for his dignity, traveled quietly through conversations among family, friends, and caregivers, planting seeds of compassion that grew in unexpected places. In this way, even in profound stillness, Mark continued to give, offering lessons in grace, reminding others of life's fragility, and demonstrating that a person's worth never diminishes no matter how much changes on the surface. There were, of course, harder days when discomfort pressed more insistently or when memories of freer times arrived unbidden, bringing a quiet ache visible in the tightening of features or a distant gaze. During those moments, the response from those around him remained steady and tender, soft reassurances spoken close, gentle repositioning for relief, favorite sounds played at just the right volume, or simply sitting in attentive silence until the wave eased. No one tried to rush the feeling away or pretend it did not exist. Instead, they honored it as part of the human experience Mark was still fully living. These episodes, though difficult, often gave way to periods of deeper calm, as though the storm had cleared space for renewed quiet. Family learned to navigate these rhythms with growing grace, understanding that supporting someone through such times required as much inner steadiness as outward action. Mark himself seemed to possess an innate reservoir of resilience that surfaced most clearly in these shadowed moments, allowing him to return to equilibrium with a patience that inspired everyone who witnessed it. Looking across the wide span of years now marked on this journey, it became evident that Mark's life, once defined by movement, conversation, and everyday independence, had transformed into something equally profound yet utterly different, a sustained presence of love received and quietly returned. He had become a living center around which care, loyalty, patience, and tenderness continually circled, drawing out the best qualities in those who remained near him. The story no longer centered on what he could do in the conventional sense, but on what continued to shine through limitation, unshakable dignity, enduring warmth, and the simple, powerful fact of still being here, still mattering deeply to so many hearts. Each day he greeted, even in silence and stillness, carried its own quiet victory, another sunrise witnessed, another gesture of care accepted, another bond quietly strengthened that in its deepest essence, this chapter, and indeed the entire arc of Mark's experience, served as a gentle, persistent reminder that human value is never measured by capability alone. It exists in the act of being, in the capacity to receive love and reflect it back in whatever form remains possible, in the courage to endure when endurance itself becomes the daily work. Mark, through every restrained expression and every moment of quiet presence, continued to teach that life retains meaning and beauty even when reduced to its most essential elements: connection, compassion, gratitude, and the unbroken thread of love that runs through it all, unbroken and bright, no matter how softly it now glows. As the final chapters of Mark's long journey drew near, time itself seemed to slow, allowing every remaining moment to carry its own quiet weight and beauty. The care setting had long since become more than a place of support. It had transformed into a small, steady world where love, routine, and kindness held everything together. Staff members who had known him for years now moved through their tasks with an almost familial tenderness, anticipating needs before they were signaled, adjusting blankets with practiced care, and speaking in soft, familiar tones that carried years of shared history. Mark's responses, though always understated, remained remarkably consistent: a lingering gaze when something pleased him, a subtle relaxation of features during moments of comfort, or simply the calm continuation of presence that had become his way of saying he was still here, still connected. Family visits continued with the same devotion that had sustained them through every previous season, though now they often included longer periods of shared stillness, sitting together in silence, holding space for whatever the moment offered without needing to fill it with words. These gatherings felt sacred in their simplicity, a recognition that the deepest bonds sometimes speak loudest when least is said. Through every quiet hour, Mark continued to embody the same gentle spirit that had defined him from the beginning: thoughtful, grateful, and profoundly kind, even when expression had been reduced to its most essential forms. In these later times, memories surfaced more frequently for those around him, snapshots of the man he had once been, walking briskly through life, laughing easily with friends, offering help without being asked, and approaching every day with quiet optimism. Yet no one mourned the past at the expense of the present. instead, they honored how those same qualities still shone through in different ways, through patience endured with grace, through the dignity maintained in vulnerability, through the unspoken trust that continued to draw people close. Family members found themselves reflecting often on the lessons Mark had taught without ever intending to lecture, the value of showing up consistently, the strength found in accepting help when needed, the enduring power of a kind heart even when the body could no longer carry it forward in action. These realizations settled deeply, changing how they moved through their own lives, making them slower to judge, quicker to offer support, more intentional about expressing care before time ran short. In this way, Mark's presence continued to ripple outward, touching lives long after his world had narrowed to four walls and a window view of changing skies. The medical team, too, approached this final stretch with deep respect and professionalism, always prioritizing comfort above all else. Every adjustment to care, whether a slight change in positioning, a warmer room, or carefully timed relief from discomfort, was made with Mark's evident responses guiding the way. No intervention was ever rushed or impersonal, each decision carried the weight of years of knowing who he was and what would honor that identity now. Pain management remained gentle yet effective, ensuring that peace, rather than struggle, defined the days. When family asked questions about what lay ahead, answers came with honesty tempered by compassion, always leaving room for hope in whatever form it could still take, hope for comfort, for meaningful moments, for the absence of suffering. This climate of transparency and care allowed everyone to remain present rather than consumed by fear, focusing instead on making each day as gentle and dignified as possible. As the end drew near, a profound stillness settled over the room, one that felt less like absence and more like completion. Loved ones gathered in greater numbers when they could, creating a quiet circle of support that surrounded Mark completely. They spoke softly of gratitude, for the years shared, for the lessons learned, for the privilege of walking beside him through every part of the journey. Hands rested gently on his, voices offered familiar endearments, and favorite melodies played at the softest volume, filling the space with echoes of happier times. Mark remained aware in his own way, responding to touch and sound with the same subtle signals of connection that had carried through the years. There was no dramatic farewell, no final grand statement, only the quiet continuation of love expressed in its purest, most elemental form, presence, tenderness, and unwavering acceptance. In those final hours, time seemed to hold its breath, allowing every participant to feel the full weight and beauty of what had been shared across a lifetime. When the moment of passing arrived, it came as peacefully as anyone could have hoped, without struggle, without distress, simply a gentle easing into stillness after so many years of courageous endurance. The room remained filled with those who loved him most, their tears falling quietly amid a deep sense of release rather than despair. No one felt the need to rush or to speak, instead, they simply stayed, honoring the sacred transition with the same steady devotion that had marked every previous chapter. Later, when the first waves of grief began to settle, what remained strongest was not sorrow alone, but profound gratitude, for having known such a gentle soul, for witnessing resilience in its truest form, for being part of a story that had shown, again and again, the unbreakable power of human connection. In the days and weeks that followed, Mark's memory lived on in countless quiet ways. Family members kept small traditions alive, planting flowers he had once admired, listening to music he had loved, sharing stories with younger generations so they would know the kind of man he had been. Friends reflected on conversations long past, realizing how his example of kindness had shaped their own choices without them always noticing at the time. Colleagues from earlier years spoke of him with warmth when his name arose, remembering a presence that had made ordinary days feel lighter. Even caregivers who had tended to him in his final home carried his story forward, often mentioning him as an example of grace when speaking with new staff or families facing similar journeys. In every retelling, the focus remained on his character rather than his circumstances, on the love he inspired, the patience he showed, the quiet dignity he never lost. Looking back across the full span of his life, from the curious boy wandering peaceful paths, through the young man building a meaningful existence, into the years of profound challenge and unwavering endurance, Mark's story emerged as something far greater than any single chapter could contain. It became a testament to the enduring beauty of the human spirit when met with love, to the ways kindness can persist through every trial, and to the truth that a life well lived leaves light behind long after it has moved on. He had shown, in both action and stillness, that worth is never measured by what the body can do, but by the heart it carries and the love it continues to reflect, even in silence. And so the story of Mark concludes not with an ending, but with a quiet continuation, in every act of compassion it inspired, in every memory kept warm, in every heart that learned from his example to hold others a little closer, to speak a little kinder, to stay a little longer when someone needs it most. His journey, though marked by unimaginable hardship, ultimately shone brightest in the love it drew out of others and the gentle legacy it left behind, reminder that even the most difficult paths can lead to something beautiful when traveled with courage, surrounded by care, and held forever in grateful remembrance. May his memory remain a soft, steady light for all who knew him, and for all who carry forward the lessons of a life defined, above all else, by kindness.